Hello world of YouTube and welcome to another episode of Redacted, the segment where I take a look at records that have a solid foundation but a spotty execution. And I already kind of teased what this one was going to be last month, so let's just dive into it. This is my redaction on the incredibly divisive 5th studio outing by the rock band Weezer, the 2005 album Make Believe.
Wonder, can you blame her? Singing no.
Jonas is a 19-year-old guitar-playing songwriter from the Midwest who decides to convince his band to move to the streets of where they can make it big as rock stars. And they get lucky. They land a tour opening for one of the bigger local bands in the scene, and throughout that tour, Jonas learns a lot about himself and grows as a person while surrounded by love, drugs, and other happenstances. And this album is now a soundtrack to that, featuring songs written by Jonas, or written from the perspective of Jonas, and as sort of a companion piece to Jonas's headspace.
Hold on to, just pass through, singing. I have many doubts about my motives. I have many fears about I was happier. This is so scared, so scared. It may hit the street when you're on drugs. All the police. I don't wanna be a chump. Now I feel the shame. There's no one else in one of these nightclubs. It's what you have heard. Love is the end. Yes, I do.
To make Make Believe better, I recontextualized the entire project, because while I like this record, I'm an adamant defender of it. If you've seen my Weezer discography review, you know that. I understand people's beef with it. I get why people don't like it. And it was my goal with this video to make it a more presentable piece for people. And I kind of have to do that by recontextualizing a lot of the writing. And it would make sense for this to be a concept record, because what was big in the 2000s in rock? Concept albums, thanks to...
Don't wanna be an American idiot.
And of course Weezer would jump in on that bandwagon, and it actually makes the title, Make Believe, make more fucking sense. Not that album titles have to tie to what the album is about, but it's always nice to have that a part of the record. Yes, this is very much still a Weezer record in sound, but it's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit beefier, because it's trying to be a California rock record written by a 19-year-old singer-songwriter. That's not to say all the songs on here are written from Jonas's perspective or written in the character of Jonas, but it does let Rivers kind of play that card if people have issues with some of the songwriting, like on some of the tracks I kept, like Blowin My Stack, which I added from Death to False Metal, which is one of the Fallen Soldiers, We're All on Drugs, or even My Best Friend.
And one of the big reasons why I didn't want to go about redacting this album initially is because all of the Fallen Soldiers aren't available. But given I had seen what Fallen Soldiers are on Death to False Metal, some of them don't fit the album in general in any sense, whether the original version, my version, or whatever version they were trying to make. So that's why I went ahead and just decided to do it now anyway, because I found a bunch of songs that fit the concept I wanted to pitch, and I'm happy with it.
As far as a narrative perspective, this follows the story from start to finish. Perfect Situation is from, like, the start of the tour. It is them getting to be these big rock stars opening for this huge band. And the love that is a follow-through throughout the entire record is Jonas's love that he has for one of the members of the other band, of the bigger opening band. And they do have this kind of kinship that they develop early on in the story's narrative that then gets washed away as Jonas starts to live in the LA rock star lifestyle of drugs and addiction and all that sort of stuff.
Along with him still just kind of being a 19-year-old guy who was awkward in his hometown and is still awkward even though he's trying to be this big rock star.
And by the end of the record, with the Angel and the One, they don't have the same love for each other. They have this kind of separate sense of ennui that I talked about in the Red album. And that's why I put the Angel and the One on here. I know I'm jumping way far in the track listing, but this isn't going to be your typical structured Redacted. I wanted to more talk about why I did what I did, why I'm contextualizing the record the way I did, and what other themes I'm exploring on this version of Make Believe. I took away a lot of the songs, like what is listed here, because they're either too basic or don't add much to the narrative or the themes I'm trying to focus on with Make Believe.
Damage in Your Heart could play as like an alternative ending to the story, but it's not exactly what I was going for with love and overcoming your own issues, your own problems as a person and growing. You know what I mean? And while I kept Beverly Hills off of the album proper, if we were in a perfect world and this version of Make Believe came out, I still would have wanted Beverly Hills to be a single to drop before the album, because it's like an introduction to the story. You know, it is Jonas. It's a song written by Jonas about his desire to be in Beverly Hills. You know what I mean? Kind of like what Kendrick Lamar did with Good Kid, Mad City before that album dropped. I know that if this version of Make Believe were to have been written, they wouldn't have made Beverly Hills, because that's not a song that I would say encapsulates the record's themes at all. It's more of just more songs written from the perspective of Jonas, but that's something that I would have liked to have seen in like a perfect world.
One of the big things I wanted to focus on was love. That's why I have Perfect Situation where it is, followed by The Other Way, because Perfect Situation is the fantasy. It is the perfect situation. And The Other Way is the reality. That is a song written from Jonas's perspective. Perfect Situation is a song written as Weezer, you know, except for maybe the hook. It's kind of a melding of both worlds. It is, again, the ideal melding of both concept, or both narrator and reader, or narrator and main character into one song. The Other Way and even Hold Me are kind of written as Jonas, and really the first 4 songs are kind of written from Jonas's perspective. Hold Me and The Other Way are kind of Jonas expressing his feelings towards the singer. Blowin My Stack and We're All on Drugs, kind of the beginning of the excess. Blowin My Stack doesn't necessarily immediately refer to blowing your stack on drugs, but it's got that kind of jovial sense. It could also just be played as like a nice single. It doesn't have to be contextualized with the act of buying drugs with your money that you're getting from your job or your music gig, but you can contextualize it into the record very easily, especially if it's followed by We Were All on Drugs. This is such a pity as a kind of another Perfect Situation where it's a Weezer song, but it's also kind of from Jonas's perspective, kind of deep in the excess of drugs. You know, he's kind of basking in the drugs, and the whole synth tones in the song itself are to be represented representative of being high on drugs. You know, a little more than We Are All on Drugs is, with its chord progression and stuff like that. But this is such a pity as almost like a drunken call that Jonas would be making to the member of the band that he is in love with. Pardon Me is almost like a reprise of Hold Me. They are 2 songs that sonically sound very similar to each other with their choruses. Not just because they both have me in the chorus, but they are kind of a setup and punchline to a thread through the album. Hold Me is a desire to feel close to someone, while Pardon Me is seeking forgiveness for your own shortcomings when trying to get with somebody. It just kind of basks lower from Pardon Me. Pardon Me is kind of a coming down from your excesses and highs, and Losing My Mind is kind of that bottom of the barrel moment in a movie where the band's mad at you, the tour manager's mad at you, everybody's mad at Jonas And that's written from the perspective of Jonas, as is Pardon Me, kind of Pardon Me, and This Is Such a Pity are kind of a two for Weezer and Jonas hybrid. But Losing My Mind is from Jonas's perspective, and so is Love Is the Answer. But Love Is the Answer, obviously I had to use the Hindi version, because it's the only version that's out, even though this is written for Make Believe. And in the context of the story, the decade it was in, it kind of makes sense to make this version anyway, because in the 2000s, it was a little on the nose to have Hindi culture be representative of love and peace and everything like that. And Weezer would definitely, if they were making this a concept record, use a Hindi version for this part of the record to represent a change of character, a change of heart, and a shift in character to not necessarily seeking love, but acting as a build-up to the Angel and the One, where love isn't the same traditional sense. It's something a little more, it's something a little deeper, something a little more impactful. And that's why Love Is the Answer goes into Best Friend, My Best Friend, because it is a reaffirmation of it's Jonas being, or writing from the growth he's gained from Love Is the Answer, which is totally just a Weezer song, Love Is the Answer. That then leads into The Angel and the One, which is that ennui that I talked about. It is a song written by Jonas and Weezer, but Jonas to express his growth as a person. And while this is kind of cheating from my regular Redacted format, normally with this show, I only pick records that were written during an album sessions. That's why whenever I pull B-sides from like a B-sides compilation, they're ones that are explicitly said to have been written during a certain era. That's why I injected the songs from the Red album that I did from, or on the Red album that I did from Death to False Metal, and I'm doing the same thing on here. I'm only putting like Fallen Soldiers on here outside of The Angel and the One, because again, it doesn't fit the version of the Red album that I was pitching, but it fits the version of Make Believe that I'm pitching, so I'm torn. I really like this song as the closer to the record. It gives this album this very big, anthemic closer that the Best Friend leads into really well, and even though it's a slower jam, it's a really nice, impactful, slow jam to end Make Believe on, and that's why it's here. And that's pretty much my redaction. Like Pink Ballads and Clusterfuck, I kind of had a lot of fun putting my own spin on this record, even though it is very different than the Make Believe that came out. But I feel like if Weezer would have gone through with this in the 2000s and pitched it as a concept record, it would have been far more successful for them for the reasons that I talked about earlier. Rivers could have easily written off any of the poor songwriting as, well, I was writing in the character of a 19-year-old in the 2000s, you know? And again, I feel like this would have definitely been a thing Weezer would have did, and if they would have made a concept record, it would have been like this, because Weezer love Weezer, and they love referencing themselves, and they love being a little tongue-in-cheek in their own way. While it's not exactly like a 2000s version of Pinkerton, that's what it was trying to be, and this is the closest I could really get to making something like that, and something that's sellable to people that excuses some of the album's shortcomings in a way. Again, it recontextualizes a lot. I'm really pulling at some strings for this, but I like this. I like the way this sounds. I like the way this flows, and that's my piece on it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this, be sure to like. If you want to see other content from me, be sure to subscribe. If you want to support the channel, feel free to support the Patreon. It's linked down in the description. I'm going to get out of here. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lots of situations, and I'll see you another day.